Americans currently owe $1.263 trillion on their credit cards. That number alone gets thrown around as proof that a crisis is coming. But here's what almost nobody mentions. It's actually about $17 billion below the all-time high set just 2 quarters ago. We are not looking at a record. We're looking at a number that went up, came down slightly, and is now sitting almost exactly where it was. So if the balance itself isn't the story, what is? Try this question instead. What happens to a household carrying credit card debt if they lose their job? That's the real question worth asking. Not, how much do Americans owe, but how much room do they have left if their income disappears? And when you start pulling that thread, the picture gets a lot more specific and a lot more useful than a scary headline number. Let's start with what we actually know. As of the second quarter of 2026, credit card balances sit at $1.263 trillion, according to the New York Fed. That's up $21 billion from the previous quarter. Total household debt across everything, mortgages, auto loans, student loans, credit cards, is $18.77 trillion, and the overall delinquency rate across all of that debt is 4.7%. None of that by itself screams disaster. Debt goes up most quarters. That's normal in a growing economy. The number that should actually get your attention isn't the balance, it's the interest rate attached to it. The average credit card rate right now is around 21%. For accounts that are actually carrying a balance month to month, the ones actually paying interest, it's closer to 21.5%. Here's what that means in real terms. Say a household is carrying a steady $10,000 balance. At 21.5%, that's $2,150 a year in interest. Divide that out, and it's roughly $179 a month just in interest before a single dollar goes toward the actual balance. That's the part that matters. A mortgage at a fixed rate doesn't change when your paycheck stops. A credit card does the opposite. It sits there charging you 21% whether your income is stable or gone. And if you can't pay it off, the balance doesn't just wait patiently, it compounds. That's why credit card debt behaves so differently from every other kind of debt a household carries. It's not just expensive, it's also flexible in the worst way. If your income drops, your mortgage payment doesn't move, but your ability to just put more expenses on a card is right there, tempting, easy, and expensive. Now picture the scenario researchers actually worry about: a real increase in unemployment layered on top of households that are already carrying revolving balances at 21%. Here's how that plays out. Someone loses a job, their income drops, fixed costs, rent, insurance, car payment, don't drop with it. The gap gets covered the fastest, easiest way available, the credit card. The balance grows exactly when the person can least afford new interest charges. Minimum payments become harder to make. And if the missed payments pile up, the credit that was supposed to be a safety net starts disappearing right when it's needed most, because lenders tend to tighten access to credit at the same time unemployment rises, not after. That's not a hypothetical dreamed up for a video. That's roughly what happened during the Great Recession. Credit card charge-offs, balances lenders write off as unlikely to ever be repaid, rose alongside unemployment as households leaned on cards to cover gaps, and then couldn't keep up as joblessness dragged on. So if that mechanism is real and it's happened before, shouldn't today's delinquency numbers already be showing the warning signs? This is where the story most people are telling actually breaks down. There's a stat getting passed around a lot right now. 12.8% of credit card balances are seriously delinquent, 90 or more days past due. On the surface, that number looks brutal. It sounds like more than $1 in $10 of credit card debt is in serious trouble. But the New York Fed published research in August 2026 specifically to explain why that number is misleading on its own. And the explanation matters. There are 2 different ways to measure delinquency. One is a flow measure, how many new accounts are falling behind each quarter. The other is a stock measure, the total dollar amount currently sitting in delinquent status, including debt that's been delinquent for a while. The 12.8% figure is a stock measure, and a big part of what's inflating it isn't a wave of new people falling behind, it's more than 23 million Americans who already have charged off credit card debt, sitting on their credit reports, in some cases from months or years ago, still counted in that pool. Meanwhile, the flow measure, the rate at which new accounts are becoming seriously delinquent, has stayed broadly stable since 2024, not spiking, not accelerating, stable. That's a genuinely different story than delinquency is exploding. What's actually happening is closer to old, already troubled debt lingering in the data longer, while the rate of new households falling into serious trouble hasn't meaningfully changed. So does that mean everything is fine? Not exactly. And this is the part worth sitting with. It means the crisis hasn't started. It doesn't mean the setup for one isn't there. Here's the honest version of where things stand. New serious delinquencies are stable. Aggregate delinquency across all household debt actually improved slightly. The labor market, as of now, remains relatively steady. None of that supports credit cards are about to blow up the economy. But at the same time, rates are still around 21%, debt is sitting near its recent high, and the fundamental math hasn't changed. A household with a revolving balance at 21% has very little room to absorb a real income shock. The credit card companies aren't going to lower rates because someone got laid off. If anything, history suggests lenders pull back exactly when borrowers need access the most. Which brings us to the actual conclusion, and it's a more useful one than everything's fine or everything's about to collapse. The US doesn't need a new $1 trillion of credit card debt to have a serious problem. It only needs a meaningful rise in unemployment among the people who are already carrying expensive revolving balances. That's the mechanism to actually watch, not the size of the headline number, but what happens to job security for people who are already leaning on high-interest credit. If you want to know whether this is getting worse, don't watch the total balance. Watch new delinquency flows, not the stock number, and watch the unemployment rate. Those two moving together is the actual warning sign. The total debt figure moving up or down 1% or 2% on its own isn't. For your own finances, the takeaway is simpler than the data behind it. A credit card can function as a safety net, something to lean on temporarily during a rough month. Or it can function as a trap, a balance that grows faster than you can pay it down, especially once real interest starts compounding on top of missed payments. The difference between those two outcomes almost always comes down to one thing: whether the balance gets paid down while income is still stable before a shock ever hits. So here's the real question underneath all of this, and it's worth asking yourself honestly. If your income dropped tomorrow, is your credit card still a safety net for you? Or has it quietly become something you're already leaning on too heavily? Would you rather carry $10,000 in credit card debt at 21% or hold $10,000 in savings earning a lower return instead? Drop your answer in the comments. I want to see how people are actually thinking about this trade-off right now.